So one thing I get asked all the time is how often do I need to water my seedlings? Now, as soon as you've sown your seedlings, you'll need to water them because often the outside coating of a seed needs the water to break down for it to germinate and to get going. So that's obviously an obvious one. Water it once you've sown it. The next thing is you then put them in a greenhouse at this time of year, for example, or on a windowsill, and it's really hard to tell you an exact day to water your seedlings again. And really it becomes with test and learning. Obviously in the heat wave during the summer when we had some biennials going, we were like watering them sometimes in the morning and the evening, or at least once a day. Whereas at this time of year, you know, the weather's nice, but it's not boiling hot. There's a few cold days, etc. So, you know, you can go sort of 4 or 5 days without needing to water. Now, it's really important that you keep your seedlings watered and that the soil stays moist, because the roots are obviously all down there and they've got the kind of microscopic hairs that are taking in all the nutrients via the water. So if you don't have water, then the seedlings can't take up nutrients either. And by taking up the water, they then basically breathe it out through their leaves, and that's how they keep things pumping. So you really want to make sure that your seedlings stay hydrated. Once they've dried out, then it's really hard to get them back to kind of being alive again. So that is a common way of killing seedlings. But another common thing that I know a lot of us beginner gardeners do, because we're so excited and we want to kind of make sure that our seedlings are well looked after, that our little babies, is that we sometimes overwater our seedlings. Now this can cause problems because those microscopic root hairs are in the water. They can't breathe, they can't get the oxygen, they can't get those nutrients up as well, which often leads to kind of very yellow leaves sometimes, and can be a real problem for your seedlings. So a few tips from me on how often to water your seedlings. First of all is just to look at the top of the compost. So you can see here that these are the September Nigella transformers. You can see they're just starting to germinate and grow, but you can see that there's you can see the top of the soil's wet. I will not need to water them. I watered these about 2 days ago and they're still absolutely fine. With this cold weather, they've not dried out at all. So you know, you can touch the top of the compost if you're not sure. Whereas an example where I haven't watered it for a few days is this cornflower, and you can see the top of the compost is a little bit dusty, but the interesting thing here is that it probably still doesn't necessarily desperately need watering. If you poke your finger in, you can see if it does need watering. In fact, these do, because it's quite dusty even further down. You can see the plant's a little bit floppy. So I will give that one a good water just now, because so it's not always the case that the top of the compost is a sign. So this one, you can see I watered this 2 days ago as well, and you can see this bit's still wet, but some of the edges are still dry. So again, if I poke my finger down, yep, it's dry, but in that wet bit obviously it's not. But I probably would water that one just to make sure that it's all topped up and a healthy little happy sweet pea. Again, that one was from the September box that I was sowing in a pot. The rest of them in milk bottles. So yeah, it completely depends on the seedling. It completely depends on where you're storing them. If you're storing them in the sunniest part of the garden in a greenhouse, then you may need to water them more often, which is a good thing. If you're on a windowsill above a radiator, for example, again, that will mean you need to water them more. It's kind of common sense. So the first thing to do is look at the top of the soil. If it's wet, it won't need watering. The second thing to do is, if it's a little bit dry or dusty on top, to stick your finger in and a couple of centimeters down. Obviously you don't want to do it right next to the plant, which will damage the roots, but right in the corner. Does that need watering? Yes, it does. I'll water that. And the next thing, if you're still not sure, is to lift it. Now obviously you're not going to be able to tell the difference here, but this one feels much lighter than this one that I've just watered. This is scabious that I've just potted on. So again, you can feel the weights of them, and that's a really good habit to get into every morning or whatever. Just lift them up, see if they need watering, and you'll soon learn when they do. The other thing that I've done a little video on is feeding. So feeding once a week your seedlings. So go and watch that, because that can really help your seedlings as well, but you want to make sure you water them well first. So when you're doing your weekly feed, make sure you water everything first, then do your feed with your watering can over the top. I hope that was a little bit helpful, gave you a few tips on how to keep your seedlings watered but not overwatered. And if you have any questions, then let me know.